Now, this video is about career transitions, but I want to begin with, if you're happy in the job that you're in currently, it's perfectly okay to stay where you are. And this video is addressing cases where people want to leave but can't. Now, increasingly, so many of us are drawn to the prospect of an air era lifestyle, which is driven by purpose, freelancing activities, and community-focused projects. But I think that there are many barriers in our way. So I speak to many individuals about their career transition. So I want to use this video to do a very deep dive on what are some of the barriers that come up again and again. So I want to share some strategies and mindsets that need to be in place. And now, while you might think that most of these barriers should be quite obvious, but I think it's a little bit like an iceberg. So on the surface, we think it's mostly about income, insecurity, but actually most of the fears are much more deeply ingrained in our psyche than we realize. In today's video, I will talk a lot about the Earth era, air era world. And while most of you watching will already be quite familiar with this concept, you've heard me talk about it before. But if you're new to this, you can check out links in the description to some of my earlier webinars where I've covered these. So in these recorded webinars, these are mostly free on YouTube. But if you'd like to catch a copy of my most recent recording, The Great Reorder, you can also find links to it in the description. Now that one is chargeable, but for your purchase, you also get access to my global forecast for late 2025 and 2026. I'm covering the forecast for countries like the USA, Ukraine, Japan, Singapore, and so on. So now on to our topic about career transitions. The first section is on money. So we are diving straight into the area where I think most people have your barriers in. And the first surface obstacle is that an air era career cannot match the current salary that I'm earning. And for most of us, when we make a transition into an air era career, in all likelihood, you are moving into a space where you have zero or little experience in. So if you're comparing it to a job in which you have many years of experience, and if you expect to earn the same amount of money, that could be fundamentally quite unrealistic. Now, ironically, for most people, you'll find that actually doing an air era purpose-driven career can actually earn you more than in your conventional job. And certainly there will, of course, be people who earn less. But my point here is that you are comparing two completely different careers that are serving different audiences, different needs. And I would say expecting to both careers to earn the exact same amount just doesn't really make much sense. The next surface obstacle is this, that I'll have to eat my savings if I want a purpose-driven career. Now, I've observed that many people think that if you take on a purpose-driven career, that you are going to have to eat your savings and not earn any money, do it for free, which is the only reason why some people imagine that you need to have lots and lots of savings before you make a transition. But actually, the truth is that freelancers and self-employed people do get paid. It's not free. And which is why, for many of you, the next surface obstacle is that, but the work I want to do, doesn't pay very much. Now, that can certainly be the case, now, especially if you are looking to serve a demographic that cannot afford to pay you. However, I'd like to offer a few strategies and counter arguments to that thought. Number one is that you don't just do one thing. Now, employees have one job, but actually freelancers can combine multiple things at one go, and this means that each one can have a revenue stream of its own. And that leads to number two, which is that as an employee, you are stuck selling entire weeks and months to your organization. But as a freelancer, your time is your own, which means you can allocate it in whichever way you like. So perhaps you have this one thing you want to do that won't make you much, but trust me, it's not going to take up 5 days of your week. It's not going to take up 9 hours a day. Which brings us to number three, which is this is how you can combine doing multiple things at one go. For example, if you're a coach and you'd like to help, say, a small group of at-risk youths in a neighborhood area which are low income, and that can happen maybe, say, twice a week on 2 evenings in a week. Now, it's true that these people may not be able to pay you a lot, but you have a lot of time left in the week, and then you can allocate for yourself 7 other sessions where you are perhaps coaching some bank executives who can afford to pay you at or even above the market rate. And in fact, some of your other activities may not even be coaching in nature, because as a freelancer, you can mix and match. So that means that you can also take on, say, jewelry design in your free time. You can even teach a guitar class. Remember, in the air era, you are no longer limited by having one job. So you don't actually need every single project that you take to bring in a full-time salary. Now, the next surface obstacle is that there is no income stability. Now, this is not necessarily true. And in fact, I'm going to suggest two approaches that you can take as a freelancer to structure your income. Now, the first is to work on a retainer basis. So that means you get paid on a monthly, quarterly basis. And this can work, for example, if you are a YouTube videographer or a social media manager. So the work scope is fairly regular on a monthly basis, and so is the pay. And that works, of course, if you like more or less doing the same thing month after month. But if you're the type of person who likes more variety in your projects, you can try the second approach, which is to have a pipeline of projects. So I know personally some freelance software designers or graphic designers who actually have a pipeline of projects one after another, and they're so booked up that they have to decline projects. Now, I'm aware that if you have had more experience as an employee, you might be quite nervous about having to find projects. And yes, okay, I can see how this is a real obstacle, and I will address that later in the video. Now, it is true that as a freelancer, it could be that income instability can come in the form of the fact that you don't get the exact same amount of pay or income on the monthly basis. But this also means that there is a possibility for you to bring in a bumper crop on some months. And in fact, you do have control over the types of projects that you do. And now we go to the next big topic, which is security. And so the surface obstacle is that freelancing does not offer job security. And now I have to address the irony that while freelancing and self-employment have always been associated with no job security, but what I'm hearing from my students and clients with conventional jobs is that in their industries, jobs are becoming more and more insecure. So many people are on contract or non-permanent sort of job contracts and arrangements. And so now the irony is that it is the employees who don't have job security. And in fact, freelancers tend to have better retention over their projects because the truth is you have a personal relationship with your clients, you understand their needs, and perhaps you have customized something that works specially for your clients. So they're actually a lot less likely to sort of terminate their relationship with you. And in fact, freelancers have a lot of control as to when their projects will come to an end, which means you can manage, you can control your activities and your expenditures when that happens. Now, in contrast, many employees are just one piece in a large organization, and your work is not customized. And if you leave, someone else will just come in and do the exact same job, i.e., you are replaceable. And very few employees have control or warnings about when a retrenchment letter may come your way. And now we go on to our third topic, which is lifestyle. And from here on, you'll see that the obstacles are no longer just surface obstacles, but we're getting closer to where these are real psychological concerns. Let's start with the first one, which is real obstacle, taking a pay cut scares me. Now, I found that rather than money itself being the actual issue, most of the time it's a psychological issue. Now, many people struggle with the fact that if you go and pursue a purposeful career, you now have to pay a price for resources and the lifestyle that you have to give up. Which is not true, by the way. I've said a few times that actually a lot of self-employed people actually make more than they do in their conventional jobs. However, it is true that yes, in the short term, it's possible that you could be making less than what you typically make on a monthly basis. So I think the bigger concern here is that is the concern about money a practical one? As in, if you do make less money than you typically do, does it actually impact whether you are able to pay for your meals, your rent, and your bills? Or is it a psychological issue? As in, when you used to have a certain number on your payslip, and now you realize that the number that you're earning is a lot less, and it makes you feel insecure, it makes you feel weird. Which is it? Is it a practical or is it a psychological concern? And now we go to the next real obstacle, which is I can't give up my Earth era lifestyle. And you know what I mean. The Earth era comes with a lot of money sinks of unnecessary expenditure. Things like lavish weddings, excessive home renovations, 5-star hotel vacations, and excessive consumption products like luxury bags, luxury watches. And you know, there's a huge difference between need and want. And there are a lot of Earth era concepts like upgrading to the biggest home you can afford, owning multiple properties you don't need, owning a car. These belong to want, not need. Now, here's something you may not have considered before. Once you have transitioned into a purposeful freelance job, then you may not need to purchase all these rewards and compensations for suffering through a job you don't love. So things like luxury electronics, latest phone model, vacations 3 times a year. And it's strange, but the cravings for these treats disappear once you're actually in a job you love and that you don't need a vacation from. Now, I'm not saying that you have to give up all luxuries in life and live life like a beggar. In fact, I eat at restaurants and I go on vacations too. And of course, everyone is entitled to whatever lifestyle you want. And as I've said before, just because you are self-employed doesn't mean that you won't be able to afford these trappings. But my point is that you don't want to give up the prospect of having a purposeful career just because you're unable to give up luxuries like flying business class. The next real obstacle is I don't want to have a public profile. Now, some people avoid self-employment because you think you have to be a live streamer, social media personality, showing your face on camera like what I'm doing now. Now, that's not true at all. In fact, someone is filming me as I'm speaking right now. And there are people who cut my videos into little clips and post them online. Somebody takes care of my social media accounts. Somebody runs my events for me. Now, all of these people are freelancers, and almost none of them are ever required to show their face on camera, ever. And that means that if you are uncomfortable with showing your face online, you don't have to. There's a myriad of tasks and services that you can perform without being the face of the operation. Now, topic number 4 is the lack of skills. So the real obstacle is I'm terrified of being on my own. So this stems from many years of experience having worked in large organizations where perhaps you only do one job while you depend on many other people to perform the myriad of functions that happens within a large organization. So many people are very afraid because of the idea of going self-employed means that you are completely on your own, and this is not necessarily true. Now, it could be that if you are the loner independent type and you kind of prefer not to have to collaborate with other humans, that's an option. You can do that and be all by yourself. You can run this as a one-man show or one-woman show. But otherwise, there are many ways to work with other freelancers as well. For example, you can collaborate with other freelancers to cover the tasks that you're not great at or the stuff that you don't wish to do. You can also team up with other freelancers and offer a joint service. And you can also cultivate multiple groups of freelancers that you can work with on occasional projects. And in that sense, you are never really alone. There's many other people you can connect with. Which brings me to the next layer of the issue, which is real obstacle. I don't know anybody I can collaborate with. And this is a real obstacle because most employees only hang out with other employees. And if you've been an Earth Era employee for a long time, chances are you've never had to put in effort to find people to work with because they were already made for you when you joined the organization. And it means that this passive style of work interaction means that lots of people actually lack the basic skills for social interaction and active networking. And what this means is that in the Air era, you may need to put in some effort to learn how to network with other freelancers, join professional groups, and participate in more communities. The next real obstacle is I'm not convinced I can really help people get results. And you'll never be convinced as long as you stay in your current job and never gain any experience in this new realm that you're trying to get into. And you can do endless personality tests. You can see 100 astrologers and ask them, what do you think I'll be good at? And you can be told over and over again that you'll be awesome at something, if you decide to help people with it. But until you see actual people who are actually benefiting from the service that you've rendered them, you're not going to be convinced. And this is why it's a chicken and egg thing. Until you actually do it, you're not convinced. And until you are sure that you can make it, you don't even try because you're terrified of failing. And so here, this is what I recommend. It's that you should start now, start today. Now, if you're not convinced that you can really help people get a result, then you can try it for free first. Do it for free, do it for a token fee, do it for a free lunch, do it for feedback and comments. And the thing is, what you want to do is don't just do it once, do it 10 times. and then you reflect, and then you think about it, and then you do it another 10 times. And it's okay if you don't get it right the first time, because this is not a Hollywood movie. No one gets it right the first time. And before you know it, you've already been successful maybe 20 times. And that means that having done it a few times, you know what works, what sucks, what doesn't work at all. And in fact, what I really want to emphasize here is you don't want to have excuses for not trying at all. And that means you never ever get started. And now it brings me to the ultimate obstacle, which is I don't really know what I'll be capable of building. And it really comes right down to this, isn't it? Now, if you're like most people, your career path thus far would have been dictated by very earth era things like your past work experience, your education, your immediate salary needs. And if you're like most people, you may never have given much thought to your passions, your interests, or even what kind of contribution or service you'd like to render to society. And what's really strange for me is how many people actively avoid having to confront the question of what would you like to do in your life. And you know the strange thing in my experience as an astrologist, that most people actually do know what it is that they want to do. It's just that they laugh it off as being something that is unrealistic, is unattainable, and most likely it's because you might have chosen something that's quite uncommon or unconventional. You know, lots of people joke when I ask them what you want to do with their life. They joke that they want to live a Tai lifestyle, go and travel, do manicures. And yes, there certainly are vacuous people like that. But I know that if you've made it this far in the video, you're probably not one of them. Now, I know most people want to make a contribution to society. And yes, you do need to charge a legitimate fee for your service. But you know, and even as I make fun of how so many people just want like holidays and branded bags and things like that, I know actually most people don't care for those things. They just want to lead a simple life with their loved ones. And I don't think it's a ridiculous idea that you can choose something that serves society, charge a legitimate fee, and still make sure that your purpose is being fulfilled, and ultimately be responsible for your expenses and still have a little bit over. And you know, when I put it that way, it really, really doesn't sound like an insane idea at all. And how would I suggest addressing this missing piece of the puzzle, which is, what do you do with your life? Now, I'm an astrologer and I've spent decades of my life helping people address this specific missing piece of their life. Now, based on an astrology chart, we can ascertain your skills, your personality, your life force, priorities, and then we can figure out what can you do, who can you serve, where can you go. And based on that, we can work backwards and make a practical plan. Perhaps there are some skills that you need to pick up. There are some places you need to go, people you need to meet, maybe organizations you want to join, businesses you need to set up. Now, if this process is something that you would like to do, you can certainly sign up for either my astrology course or to get a consultation directly with me. You'll find links in the description to find out what you can do with that. Now, if you're genuinely interested in self-discovery, I heartily recommend doing the astrology course, because then I have time to cover everything and you can take the time to marinate and really get to know yourself. But I'm aware that some people would prefer a more quick, straightforward answer, so then you might choose to do a consultation instead. So what you can do is you can send us a WhatsApp message and we will be happy to walk you through your options. Now, if you don't like astrology and you know of other ways to help you find your purpose, go ahead, but do it. I recommend astrology not just because I do it, but because I know that astrology delivers a very comprehensive profile that looks at your core being, your own purpose, and also what you really would like to accomplish in the world, as opposed to other profiling methods which may only focus on things like personality or preferences or career suggestions. Now, if you've been an employee for most of your adult life, I can understand how making a choice like that seems like a very scary and a massive risk. And I can see why most people would say that isn't it better to just stay where I am, where the salary is regular, where the work scope, the work mates is already made and is ready for you in the organization. You don't have to do anything. Now, however, it's not that being an employee has no price to pay either. In fact, you don't get any self-definition. You never ever get to choose who you work with, who are your customers, who benefits from your service. You don't have any control over your earnings and even the what you do, how you do, when you do it. And to a large extent, for many of us, it's so strong that we didn't just sell your time and your labor to the organization. In many cases, you sold your right to individualism and self-definition to the organization as well. Now, in my opinion, the biggest problem now is that this is a very bad time to be an employee. Now, if this was still in the Earth era and there are 20, maybe 30 years more for you to ride it out, then I would say yes, being an employee is an actual viable strategy. Now, the problem here is that the Earth era ended in 2020, which was the COVID year. We are already many years into the air era. And in fact, my dentist tells me that there is a machine somewhere in China that can automate cleaning of human teeth. And honestly, if they can automate that, then they can automate anything, certainly whatever it is that you do as an employee. So the reality here is that there is no more Earth era for you to ride out. And we've come to a point where we do need to confront the possibility that being an employee is no longer a viable strategy for you in the long term. Now, this was a really long video, and I promise you, I didn't film this just to sell courses and consultations. And in fact, in this video, I covered some very real obstacles to the transitions that people need to make but have no idea how to make. Now, in fact, I am seriously considering setting up a community of freelancers of all trades and skills, including people who are established freelancers and also the more newbie freelancers. And the purpose of this is to address some very basic issues of freelancer networking and also some basic skills of how do you structure your product, how do you even put something together, how do you market your services. And I would like to find out from you and what your opinions might be. Whether are you a seasoned freelancer or are you somebody who's aspiring to be a freelancer? And I'll be very interested to know, would you be interested in joining such a community? And if you did join one, what kind of functions would you like such a community to serve? I'm really looking forward to your comments. Please share them wherever it is that you find it on any platform. I'll be reading all the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.